Welcome to This Won't Last Long, the weekly podcast where I talk about, well, stuff. Today, typically media stuff that's out there. Today we're going to be talking about two shows, Spectacular Spider-Man and Cowboy Bebop. With Cowboy Bebop, it's both the live-action version and the anime, because I watched both. So, yeah, and I'm just kind of like talking about my feelings on them and stuff like that. So the first show I'm going to be talking about, which is something that I think has stuck with me more, was Spectacular Spider-Man. So Spider-Man is probably, I would say, the most important, my favorite superhero by far, but probably the most important superhero to me. I know everybody says this, but like he's so relatable, as well as just like anybody can see themselves in Peter, Miles, Spider-Man, just Spider-Man, because it's not just Peter, and anyone can wear the mask, as Miles infamously put Into the Spider-Verse. But with Spectacular Spider-Man, there are some minor flaws for a casual viewer, but for someone like me, and I think I said this when I was mid-watching on one of the other episodes, that for a casual viewer, some of the the show is kind of fast-paced for a casual viewer who doesn't really know too much about Spider-Man and his mythos as a character, his rogues gallery, etc. For someone who grew up with Spider-Man and like sees him as a fucking hero, and just like just like grew up with him in like a lot of media, and knows like not everything, but like a lot about the character and his mythos. It doesn't matter the fast pace of the show. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. I guess no sneeze right now. But anyway, as I was saying, for the non-casual viewer, there are like no flaws pretty much. I guess you could say some iterations of the character and some like storylines are different than some like hardcore comic fans or some hardcore movie fans would like or appreciate or something like that. For just like a casual viewer, I could see like just because with the show, a lot of villains are just like kind of introduced right away, and obviously we, as in people like me, like someone who grew up with the character, like know the, like for example Doc Ock, like we know him. Like Octavius, that's Doc Ock. Osborn, okay, that's Green Goblin. There are villains who are introduced very quickly, and for example, like there was like a lot of kind of artificial villains, or not artificial, but like artificially made villains, like man-made villains. So like a Rhino and Sandman, were actually made by like Tombstone, or like Tombstone's men. Tombstone was like the big bad of the, as well as Green Goblin, were like the big bads of the show overall, which I thought was really cool. I hope to see a good Tombstone story in the MCU, which is another conversation, but back to the show. Tombstone was characterized great, I felt like. Um, the only basis I have is the Into the Spider-Verse movie. She was barely in. The side mission in the 2018 Spider-Man game with Tombstone in it, and some videos about comics that Tombstone is in. And other than that, I don't really have any basis of him as a villain. But I think he was characterized great from that basis that I have in this show. I think everyone's characterized great. The only thing I felt like some stuff was a bit rushed story-wise in Spectacular Spider-Man. Like, it just, I felt like it was because they rushed, not the actual original showrunners, but I feel like the studio rushed the show way too much and interfered way too much so that they couldn't create like a perfect show, because it is almost perfect, but they couldn't nail it. Just like they almost nailed it, and if the studio just didn't interfere, it could have been like absolutely perfect, and it could have went on for seasons and seasons, and I would have kept watching, but on Netflix. But alas, Spectacular Spider-Man is only one season. It is great, and there are some great Spider-Man moments there that are unique to the show. There's I think the one that comes to mind is when Peter saves Lizard and he has to lie to his friends and love interests and stuff, and saying that instead of fighting as Spider-Man, he was taking pictures for the Bugle. And of course that interferes with his relationships, classic Spider-Man, but what makes it unique is that later he comes back home from this fight and conversation and stuff, and he has a talk with himself, and he gets mad at himself. He says, I'm all scum to my friends. I push my friends away because I'm Spider-Man, blah, blah. Like Spider-Man's taking everything from me type thing. But then he looks at a picture of Uncle Ben, and he said, I forget the exact words, but he was something along the lines of like, this is what he died for. This is what you died for. Like I saved a little kid. I saved a father, or like I saved a kid from losing his father tonight. Dr. Connor's kids, the lizard. The lizard was like the big bad of that episode. And he realizes that he needs to be Spider-Man in order to save himself, which is something that has always been Spider-Man, regardless of the movie, show, whatever. And whatever adaptation of Spider-Man you like, loss is always a central theme. Like the struggle of being a teenager, or just like the double life kind of thing, is always a struggle with Peter, or just Spider-Man. Like in any Spider-Man thing you see at all, or play, or watch, or read, like anything, he loses everything. Like in every single thing that you watch, read, play, whatever, he loses his personal happiness. You sacrifice redemption. He sacrifices redemption for personal happiness. And that is Spider-Man at his core. and this show executes it, again, like I said, almost perfectly. With the love interests, I was really invested, actually, in Liz and Peter. They did Liz well compared to Homecoming, because with Homecoming I wasn't invested like at all in Liz and Peter. Obviously that was kind of to its benefit because you know, MJ and Peter in the MCU, but they did Liz and Peter's relationship in this show infinitely better than the MCU Homecoming movie. And they nailed Gwen and Peter. I'll always think of Andrew Garfield in his movies when I think of Gwen and Peter, but the show is a close second to their relationship. MJ and Peter are more friends in this show than love interests, but I do appreciate that because it's unique. That's what's also really good about this show. It feels unique, but also classic at the same time. Like it, you know, like I said, like the lizard kind of thing of like realizing he needs to be Spider-Man. The lizard scene I was talking about after that fight is a classic Spider-Man scene and central to his core as a character, but then also at the same time it's a unique take on that. Their take on Electro, Max Dillon, they did the origin from the Andrew movies about falling into a vat of electric eels, but again, infinitely better than the movies. Like, for example, in the Andrew movies, Electro was a nerd, a loser, and in the show, Max is a cool dude. He's swaggy, thinks he's the shit. He acts all cool in front of Dr. Connors. He works as an assistant to him as lab. That's kind of the replacement for like Oscorp. I mean, the only thing that Osborn is involved in is, of course, first of all, being Green Goblin, and then second of all, being involved in like creating all the villains, or most of the villains. No, I would say all the villains. But including himself. But it's that, yeah, they did it infinitely better because that's who Electro should be. He should be an asshole. He should be irredeemable. Like, you shouldn't care about him. Like, he shouldn't be likable. He shouldn't be this, oh, sweet nerd, oh no, he's bad now. No, it should be, no, he deserved that. Like, it should be that kind of character, that kind of story. And that's what it felt like with pretty much all the villains. That it felt like it didn't feel like they were villains to be villains. Some of them did, which isn't really a criticism because it works with the story. If you don't know, basically, like, a lot of these villains were just like created to keep Spider-Man distracted. So that kind of works with the story because they are villains to be villains, kind of. For the purpose of Norman's plan and everything. Every villain feels like they've been there forever. And I know that doesn't really make sense if you've seen the show, because he because yeah, every villain feels like they've been there forever. Like Peter feels like we know him. Like every character feels like a real person, not in a fictional universe. And it's rather, it makes it rather tragic whenever something bad in Peter's personal life happens, because it feels like it's happening to us. And I think the most tragic, which makes it the best part of the show, is the symbiote parts. That whole storyline of the symbiote versus Peter. The symbiote taking over him having to overcome it. Venom was a great villain, but he wasn't really part of the storyline of Peter overcoming the symbiote. He was just kind of like part of the villain kind of storyline. But the storyline of Peter versus his inner symbiote, that was amazing to see. Like kind of the mental battle that Peter like took in these episodes versus the symbiote. I mean, I think that's why animation is one of, if not my favorite medium of creation. You get to do things you can't do anywhere else. You know, you get to do, like, you can't create like flowing symbiote stuff in live action, you know? I mean, not the way they have it in this show. And the symbiote story in any Spider-Man story is always so relatable, not in a drug kind of way. For some people it probably is, but in a kind of inner demons kind of way. The symbiote story has always struck with me in that way of that we have to battle our own inner demons to survive. And just, yeah, survive and persevere. To swing through life, to be poetic with it, to be cool with it. But yeah, and the story of Harry and Peter, just like anything with Peter's personal life, like I was saying, is always so tragic because yeah, it feels like it's happening to us, but also it's just so like you feel for Peter in that moment because that's such a relatable thing to do, not in the sense of being Spider-Man or Spider-Woman, but to lie to a person you care about in order to protect them. Again, not in the sense of leading a double life, but just in the sense of protecting them, and yes, in some way protecting yourself, but mostly protecting the other person. And that is heartbreaking but beautiful to me. And it's like, when you think about it, Spider-Man is probably, other than Batman maybe, it's probably the most heartbreaking like superhero character ever. Like, it's just, but also he's the most hopeful at the same time, because even though he goes through all this darkness, he perseveres and like he gets up. He continues to use his power for good, and that he's so inspiring because he can inspire any one of us to use our power for good, ourselves for good, our words for good, our actions for good, like anything. And he can inspire us to take a leap of faith, to wear the mask, to be a hero. Not even in the literal sense, it can just be anything, just any little thing to one person, and it can change your life forever. Many things have done that for me, little things. I consider many little people to be a hero to me. Like one of them is Olin Rogers. He created the show Final Space. And I think I'll say this with a lot of these people. He ignited a spark of inspiration in me that I don't think anyone will ever get me higher than him. Like, that show, Final Space, is like the most inspiring show, or like the show that has inspired me to create the most, I feel like. Other than maybe Markiplier and his YouTube originals. You know, Heist with Markiplier, In Space with Markiplier, those things. Same with Jacksepticeye and his... No, he doesn't have really a universe of his egos yet, but kind of his short film kind of things that he does recently, in recent months and years and stuff. But besides those two, it's definitely Olin Rogers. And other than that, Stan Lee. Yes, I could say every individual person involved in making every single Spider-Man thing, but none of it would be possible without Stan. And because of that, because he created this character that led to so many inspiring scenes that have inspired me countless times, he's up there. So those are probably my four, I would say. And then Quentin Tarantino. I don't know in what order, but those 5 people inspired me to create so fucking much. Like insanely. And, yeah. In Spider-Man, he hasn't created movies, but, and he's not real. But, there's a beautiful, everyone knows it by now, I think, but Andrew Garfield's speech at Comic-Con. He says, I'm not gonna nail the words. I think you know the speech. He basically just says how inspiring Spider-Man is to him and how he wouldn't be here without Spider-Man. I wouldn't be here without Spider-Man. That's not part of the speech, just I'm saying. Like, I relate to that. I wouldn't be here without... This is part of the speech, without feeling Spider-Man's reassuring hand on my shoulder telling me it's gonna be alright. Like, this may sound cheesy, but whenever I used to, whenever I was like really young, um, I would always imagine Spider-Man like running beside me, kind of like talking to me and like gesturing to me and stuff, like parkouring and like swinging beside me and stuff, like on top of cars and through buildings and things like that. And that would always kind of, and sometimes it calms me down from anxiety nowadays. I know it's a bigger discussion, but like a lot of moments, I know I've been like on a tangent last little bit, but like a lot of moments in Spectacular Spider-Man have just like, when I think about them, have just calmed me down if I have like an anxiety moment or like a panic attack or something. And most of the time it's for no like reason that I have one. Like my anxiety is pretty much just random. And there's so many good moments in this show. There are amazing love moments between characters, Gwen and Peter, Liz and Peter, MJ and Peter, what have you, that I always think about. Because they make me think of stuff. But then also just moments of Peter reassuring himself, moments of the symbiote moments of him battling his inner demons and surviving and winning against himself, his darker self, and him like moments of self-sacrifice. And just, even though they hurt a lot, those heartbreaking moments, they're mainly in Peter's personal life, not Spider-Man's, but those heartbreaking character moments between him and Harry, between him and Gwen. There's like, my heart fucking shattered when Gwen and Harry when like Gwen and Harry and Liz and Peter and that started love square, whatever that was, kind of got complicated. My heart broke for Gwen and Peter, like just everyone involved. And like Batman doesn't have these character moments. We can't relate to a rich billionaire. Yes, we can relate to him turning in his pain into something good and useful for himself, but we can't relate to his alter ego Bruce Wayne, because that's his mask. With Peter, both halves are him. Peter can't be Peter Parker without Spider-Man, and Spider-Man can't be Spider-Man without Peter Parker. We as people can't survive without our inner demons, we can't help people without helping ourselves first. We can't be some sort of hero to someone without first saving ourselves, kind of thing. And that's what this show very, very almost, like, it almost nails it. It almost nails Peter as a character, and just everything about him is amazingly depicted in this show. The way he's characterized, his love life, his friendship with Harry. Just everything is amazing in this show. Green Goblin, other than the symbiote, is probably the best villain. And yeah, man, it's an amazing show. I don't think I have too much else to say on it, other than repeating myself. But yeah, if you guys have any questions about my thoughts on Spectacular Spider-Man, feel free to ask in the chat, or ask in the comments below if you're on YouTube. Before we move, or while I move on to Cowboy Bebop and talking about that experience. But yeah, not too much else to say on Spectacular Spider-Man. It's just, you know, studios suck. I wish it wasn't cancelled. I'm glad I wasn't too old to remember it being cancelled, or to like have that feeling of hurt at all, because I was like really young, so it wouldn't have mattered to me at that age. It hurts me now and it matters to me now, but I'm glad I wasn't kind of like 16 then, when it was like first airing and stuff like that, or when it was cancelled, because then I would have felt that along with everyone, and that would have been heartbreaking. But alas, it could still come back, but right now it was only one season, and it was amazing. This is very unique. If you love Spider-Man and know Spider-Man, you'll love this show. And that's just a fact. If you don't love Spider-Man, you won't love this show. That's also just a fact. 9 out of 10 for that show, because of the studio interference. But moving on to Cowboy Bebop, the anime. Now, I'm going to first talk about the anime as a solo experience, and then I will compare it to the live action adaptation. Spoiler alert, the live action one is worse than the anime. Anyway, so the anime, Cowboy Bebop. So from what I've heard and what I've asked people in my journey with anime, I've started with the best one. That's what I've heard from a few people. If that's true, let me know. If that's not true, let me know. But from what I've heard and what I've experienced, I haven't watched anything pretty much besides Cowboy Bebop. I mean, I don't know if Teen Titans counts, but I love that show. And yeah, I haven't seen anything besides Cowboy Bebop. If you have any recommendations, please. But Yeah, that's just what I've heard. I haven't really, like, I don't really have, or I haven't seen enough to have like an opinion kind of thing on like the best anime ever. But yeah, man, I think the best part about the show as a music kind of nerd is the jazz. Like I like lost my mind when I first heard the jazz in this show. It was beautiful. It was like it had pain in it. Yeah. That, what have you watched? Yeah, the soundtrack is very fucking good. Have you only seen Cowboy Bebop? Yeah, Cowboy Bebop as well, or? But yeah, the soundtrack. I mean, I've never skipped the intro ever, and I never will. Anytime I watch the show, I think from what I've learned and what I've heard. By the way, if I disappear, it is just because I'm wiping my nose with some paper towel. Anyway. Oh well, cool. We're on the same page then. Cowboy Bebop is the only one I've watched. We both watched. Great, cool. But Hunter x Hunter. I'll need to find out about that one. But oh, yeah, it was. Never skip the intro. Yeah, just I was saying that from what I've learned, just an anime needs a good intro, and if it's bad or not like the best thing ever, then that means the show's gonna be bad. Or like no, it means like it's like a good sign for an anime to have like an amazing, like, can never skip this intro track or song or whatever. For Cowboy Bebop, there is the jazz, and I don't think there's any other. I mean, of course, there's other stuff in the soundtrack, you know, themes, character themes, whatever, what have you. But just like I am such a jazz nerd, I am such a music nerd, and just hold on, I'll be right back. I need to fucking like properly. You know what? No, it's fine. It's fine. There is great action in the show. Like I said with Spectacular Spider-Man, like you can't. I mean, you can't do the show as well, do the story as well in live action as you can do with this style of animation, or just animation in general. The way Vicious's sword like sways, the way Faye shoots her guns, like swings her daggers, the way fucking Jet like swings his fucking metal arm. The way you can accurately see Spike's different eyes. And it's an amazing fucking show. And I really love this one because it's, again, I've only seen Cowboy Bebop, but it's not really that complicated. Like it's future, a distant future, and they're bounty hunters. It's pretty simple. I mean, it's just it's such a vibe, and you just like in the anime version, the only story you need to follow is towards the end. You need like the story with Vicious and Spike, and their kind of story. That's the only incredibly important thing. Other than that, I mean, of course, you need to watch the whole thing. Cowboy Bebop is just a fucking vibe. Just, and they kick ass. And when they're not kicking ass, there's heartbreaking, like heart-wrenching stuff. There's wholesome stuff. There's literally something for everybody in this show. If you're not a fan of action, just go on your phone until some wholesome thing comes up. If you're not a fan of the wholesome stuff, wait until some action shows up. If you're not a fan of some of that stuff, wait until some mystery stuff shows up with investigating phase past. Like, if you're into some blood and gore, wait until Vicious shows the fuck up. Like, just everything. There's literally something for everybody in this fucking show. And you can't deny that. And fuck, even if you're not into any of the visuals, listen to the fucking soundtrack. Listen to me and President Ezra. The soundtrack is so good. They're like, it is straight vibey jazz, and it is beautiful to the ears. And like every dynamic works, every character works. I mean, it's just, I don't think there's any flaws with it, honestly. There's some stuff that's extremely relatable. There's Spike holding on to his past and can't let go. That's an extreme, like way too close to home relatable thing. Holding on to the past too much. There's Vicious kind of on the opposite spectrum of that, with being kind of the darker side of Spike, and being kind of that opposite, kind of darker half of Spike that he needs to ward off and kill in order to survive. I didn't plan that, but that's kind of similar to Peter and the symbiote. And I haven't. I'm on the finale of Cowboy Bebop right now, the live action one. I've already finished the anime, but the way the anime ends with him killing Vicious and him facing the police, I mean, just some police force, and saying bang when he already got shot. Like, it perfectly encapsulates Spike as character. And just the sarcasm, fucking, like, just not gonna die-ness, just the, like, I'm just not gonna die right now, I'm just gonna have this final fuck you to the police. like what a legend. And he just, Jet is the best friend we all fucking want. Like, Faye is the sarcasm we want to have and want to have the balls to have. Same with Spike. Like, vicious is the darkness that we don't want to consume us. Like, it's all very, very relatable stuff. And it's a beautiful story of forgiveness, of darkness, of hope, of love, of sadness, of betrayal, of the past, of the future. It's just of wholesomeness. Like, it's just all of it is so amazing. And if you haven't seen Cowboy Bebop, the original, watch it now. And yeah. And if you haven't seen anime before, perfect, because that was the same with me. It's gonna change soon because I'm gonna watch more anime when I have time, but yeah, that's the story with me. But ending kind of on a more funny note. Guys, listen. This is gonna be quick. The live action adaptation, it has good moments, don't get me the fuck wrong. Jet was not redeemed, but like portrayed in a way I didn't know I needed, because he we explore him as a father in this one, and it's a really, as an ex cop, like, just we explored Jet's past in this, and it's really, like, it's really amazing. And it's something I didn't know. Like, my favorite episode is a Jet centric episode, and spoilers by the way, but it's his partner, his old partner from his cop days, betrays him, and he was like a mole the entire time, and he has to be a cop again, and he has like this cool jazzy, like, again, the fucking jazz vibes again. That's something they nailed in the live action adaptation. They never missed with the jazz vibes still. They will never miss with the jazz in Cowboy Bebop, ever. Pretty much all the characters were, except Vicious most of the time, and Julia most of the time, were portrayed the way they should be, or the way that they were in the anime. Everyone else besides those two were captured, I think, perfectly. And Spike, Jet, Faye, yeah, because those are the main characters. And then Vicious and Julia, yeah, weren't captured perfectly most of the time. But besides them, I think those are the only problems, other than some of the stuff kind of looks too kind of like, I don't know how to say it, like, too fake. Like, some of the hair looks like wigs. Some CGI looks like a bit iffy. It like, which is not something good, but like something very rare, because it's not that iffy in a lot of parts. Like, it's just like an occasional thing, the CGI being a bit iffy in the show. And other than those kind of few flaws, and then Vicious, I mean, I don't need to get into it too much. He's British, which I don't like. He calls Spike fearless, which I don't like. And Julia and him are like actually married, which I don't like. That's pretty much all I don't like about them. And that the dude doesn't look like Vicious should look like just his face. The hair is great, but the face, no. And same with Jet, kind of reimagining him in a way I didn't need it. I didn't know I needed. The same could be said for Faye, with her past being explored and this different retelling of that story. In the most recent episode I watched, I think the finale or episode 9, because there's 10 episodes in this live action one. The video, because in the anime, the video that was shown that revealed Faye's past to her was her on like a beach with some I think like high school friends before she was iced. And the video that was shown, the VHS tape that was shown in the live action show, was completely different. It was her in her home as a young child playing piano with her mom, and the mom like speaks and stuff, and it's like, and then Faye starts crying. It's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite scene in the fucking whole show, in live action one. And I'm about to finish watching the finale, so they could nail the bang scene, and that will be my favorite scene of the live action show. Who knows? But overall, okay adaptation. If you're watching it for the first time, good show. Like if you're watching the adaptation first, very good show. But compared to the anime, it's only okay. That's kind of all there is that needs to be said about it. And I think with editing this, should be like max 20 minutes edited of this. So I think that's pretty good. And I think that about wraps it up. I'm glad I'm editing this. Sorry about all the kind of interruptions that happened during this stream. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. This has been Michael Creates. Yeah, this has been This Won't Last Long. And hope you enjoyed, and see you next week for episode 10 for YouTube, Twitch, and episode 7 for other platforms. And see you soon, and bye-bye!